Good morning, good evening, good day, hello, bonsoir, and many other languages. If you can hear me, can I see your hands, please? If you can hear and see me. And if you other guys can come online, that would be great. Okay, so welcome to everybody online and welcome to everybody in this room. And I'd like to just start in this manner. Mind is always looking for the familiar. Your heart is looking for the unknown. Discovery. This is the tone I want to go on here. The mind is looking for the familiar, but the heart is looking to discover. Everybody's got the kind of way we're going, yeah? You can nod and pretend that you heard, yeah? Yeah? Okay. So I wrote a couple of notes down just to keep me on track. Now you'll see me head towards them occasionally. If my glasses work, that is. Or if I don't burn out with the log fire that's right next to me. The only reason why I've got a t-shirt on, not because it's summer over here. So also within, I'm going to call it our conversation, I also want to enter around the solar eclipse. Hopefully I remember all this, these little pointers. Where to go first? Okay, this is where we're going to go first. When one is being still enough, like the opportunity that's presented to us right now, then the sun doesn't shine outside. The sun shines inside. There's actually no outside sun. It's not an illusion. It's just not the truth. The sun is shining in the deep of the one who is listening, including the speaker. In truth, the listener may be the sun itself, shining in its own deep. Hence, when a solar eclipse happens, it can be a very powerful moment, whether it's moments or minutes. Apparently, this one coming up is 4 minutes 28. I remember one that I attended a festival in the UK in, I think it was 2017, and the eclipse was over the UK. And there was all these festivals going on, and I can't remember the one I went, maybe Debbie Gown, but it was something like I can't remember actually, solar heat or something or other. There were lots of different names, but when the moon goes over the sun, and apparently blocks out the light. There's an opportunity to realize one's supreme intelligence, or the intelligence of the supreme, that moves and has life throughout the universe and beyond. So as I speak like this, I'm not pointing anywhere other than to one's self. So certainly in that moment, the entire intelligence that is the I am opened up. Now, having, as it were, realized the supreme intelligence, which I'm going to just share a little, because I'm not talking about be realized, the supreme intelligence. I'm saying we're all the agency of great love, great power, great truth. And yet we are great power, great love, and truth. So there's really no one there, but everyone is it. It is displayed as the cosmos. It is displayed as intelligence throughout the universe. It is beyond needing an external light, and yet there is an external light that reflects itself back to itself. This is going somewhere. I can see as I look at these couple of notes I've put down here. So the eclipse is doing many things, but one of the things the eclipse is doing, please look, because you mustn't believe me, but do come along and inquire. It's showing us how familiar we are with our own self-image, because it's our self-image that covers up the sun that is the what one is, or the intelligence or the brightness one is. Our self-image, as it were, covers up this immense love or intelligence that is not only available to each and every one of us, but is each and every one of us. I would suggest to you it's not just that it's some cosmic earthly event that people are talking about it at these times. It's because it has a fundamental realization to each and every one of us, should we have a look. And I'm suggesting to you all, the fundamental realization is no longer to be familiar with this moment of life. Because it's the familiar that shrouds or covers the supreme being or the pure being each and every one of us is. Certainly, I remember that moment in 2017 when quite a similar immense intelligence opened up in the black that I am. So when as some of you know, when I refer to I am, I'm not pointing to him. I'm pointing to each one of us, because each one of us can say I am. That moment, I think that particular eclipse, by the way, where I would go with this in this moment is all that eclipse was the eclipse of the belief that you are not source itself. It eclipsed that and shone it back to you that you are source itself, realizing itself ongoingly without beginning and end. At least that's the opportunity here. So what got eclipsed was a limited idea of what one's nature is. What got eclipsed is that you're not God itself or source itself or whatever term that belongs to you as the being source. Also, often in an eclipse, there are other alignments of planetary aspects that also take place. And I suggest to you that those other alignments are also not outside. Astrologically, they're linked to each and every one of us as our soul's purpose. And yet, if pushed, I also may go towards a deeper place where there is no purpose. It's paradoxical. If you want in question and answers, or if I'll invite you to ask about what I've just said, but I just want to continue because I don't want to explore that unless you ask a question. The paradox of soul purpose and the deeper knowing that there is no purpose. Seems dualistic, but maybe if you encourage me, I might actually go into it. But I'm going to leave it there right now. So where I'm really heading in this satsang is that we are agents of far more than we can ever be familiar with. And it's our familiarity that covers up our agency of whatever we do and say is far more than being a person, far more than being a center, far more than being an Australian, far more than being a French person, far more than being, I'm just looking on the screen where they all are, far more than being Irish or whatever, far more. That there's nothing that's happening here and now throughout the cosmos, actually, but maybe we ought to just keep it to you and I, that one is not being an agency of something more than a familiar idea of purpose, action, and movement all encompassed in life. Can you kind of get in touch with that in your heart mostly, I suggest, but in your beingness? And just what we can do here maybe is also is kind of imagine that the eclipse has already happened. May I just show you that how this is and how we've all got familiar with this? Most people close their eyes and there's no further deepening of intelligence. We go to sleep at night and there's no further deepening of intelligence. We're so reliant on external light, which is external knowledge. We look at things as if they exist in a timeline of our experience, which points to we're also a timeline of experiencing. Therefore, we gather information as if it has something that tells us who we are, but all that it does is block our own light. Until we see that familiarity will eclipse that light. And the deep opens up to be supremely real and vastly intelligent. Love or truth itself. This is the line I want to kind of move on here with you. So for instance, when one closes their eyes, like right now, for instance, it might take you some time to have a little drop in or even to become a little quiet, right? And I suggest to you all is we can't find the quiet because we created the noise of our own self-image. And the noise of our own self-image is literally the world. But our silence is the earth and the stars that you see at night or the sun blazing. That's our silence appearing. And really our silence is wild, untamable, cannot be controlled, can't even be understood, can't even be allowed. It's just damn wild. The very movement of our lives is the function of the wild, not the function of the known. This is why when we go a little deeper and discover more of our own being, our own intelligence, we can become a little wild in terms of past reflection or relationship to the known, because we know the known is of no real value to what we are, other than not getting hit by a bus crossing the road. For instance, here we all are in whatever this is for you. This could be anywhere. This can be your work. This can be your partnership. This can be you're out in the field cutting grass. This could be you on holiday. It really doesn't matter what it is. But behind everything that you perceive in sense perception is more than a sense perception. It's what I'm calling a wild agency of unfamiliarity. And each and every one of us somehow know we're called to far more than the familiar. But dare we go there? So I'm going to point to a way to go there, which I'm not imparting time when I say to go there. What I'm actually saying is to go there in a very real way is to be here, is to be now, is to be present. But then we'll watch the agency of our minds doing everything that we were told, that we were sucked in as a child to map a universe as if it was linear and as if it could be known with an end, and it can't. And so we put ourselves as having a beginning and end, when in truth we neither have a beginning or end. So we never look at things in great depth. We never look at this moment contains more than our names, more than our image, more than the idea that there are other. Again, I'm going to take the opportunity to point to how the eclipse of your belief that intelligence is something outside displayed you, let's say by ways of authority, whether it be a lollipop lady standing on the side of the road when you were a child and say, "Come on, my love," that's a form of authority, yeah? Or whether it be whether you have to stop at a red traffic light or not. I'm not saying that you should not take any notice of these. What I'm saying is how we download authority as if it's something external and not something internal as our own true blessed nature. So when we just stop for a moment, the idea that we are not the self, not the source, our mind keeps moving self-images that we built on ourselves through taking in information as if we're someone, but that's someone that we have believed we are, but secretly believed we are. In other words, we haven't looked. Is as much information, the idea that you're someone, is as much information as the idea that there's someone over there, or the information that you've stored since a child. That's all information. Your idea of you, our idea of ourself, is information. In other words, familiarity. The question I would put to you all is it possible for each one of us to have, as it were, a linear perception of things, but seen from a perspective of infinity. To have the notion that I am someone through past information, but begin to see clearly, I enter and know myself only here and now. So to have a conversation, or even to see a sunset, or to do your work, to function on a set of rules that one has blindly taken on that gives you the information you're that particular someone, maybe only belongs to a limited sense of self, and maybe that means third dimensional only, if there is such a thing as dimensions. But what if what you are is more than just a third dimension, a fourth, fifth, or sixth, or seventh? What if there is a, as it were, greater depths to you than the familiar? So then the question is the familiar a threat to you? In other words, if you're not familiar, that means to yourself, actually, because even if you're having a conversation with someone, you might think you're being familiar to the other, but that's simply a mirror of you being familiar to yourself. So is the threat of the familiar something that you've not actually understood? That the familiar is a threat to you. If you don't stay familiar, who would you be? If this moment was completely open, how would you navigate? In some way, maybe this is a bit too romantic, maybe you would navigate by the stars. Maybe you navigate by your own depth or your own blackness, which is shone by the light of your own pure I am awareness. Maybe things will be totally different if you just became innocent, returned to innocence. In other words, no stored ideas about experiencing. Is this what meditation is about? Is this what the practice of form is about? Is this what life is about? How would you move without familiarity? Conversely, does familiarity simply belong only to three dimensions? What if three dimensions collapsed whilst remaining? Would you discover that what you are was not what you are? What you thought you were is something entirely different, and you found yourself functioning or moving entirely different. Then you might believe or see that you're the agency of other dimensions of you. Maybe that's what the eclipse of the sun might bring. I don't know, I can only speak about my own experience. But is the eclipse of the sun, in other words, the blocking out of light as if it's outside, can it be the end of your familiar way? Would your innermost intelligence open and change all the familiar patterns, know yourself and knowing the way? Maybe everything would change. Maybe that's why somehow subconsciously we keep the familiar. Because without the familiar, everything would completely be altogether different. And we might discover that what we are is a multi-dimensional agency of the one we really are. That doesn't build up patterns of familiarity, but actually celebrates the experience of being and becoming and experiencing this moment of life and fullness, and seeing that there is no need to store or have a mind that stores information. Maybe the mind only stores information as in self-image, while we build up identification with certain experiences and fear those that we have not had, or how others may have different experience, and we fear others because their familiarity is different than our own, if you follow. Maybe this eclipse is the beginning of the end of all that familiarity. Maybe now is the beginning of the end of that familiarity. Should one clearly be called to see what really is here present in this spaciousness, in this intelligence that all of us call I. So if we all have a look, like right now, in some way we're all taught that we're the agents of what we do and say and move. So we build a particular center, and we build particular information around that center, and we call it me. Have you ever woke up in the morning and there is no me? Have you ever woke up in the morning and there is no I? I'm sure you all have. Has there ever been a moment in this life where you've completely, quite naturally forgotten your familiarity, who you ever thought you were? And isn't it true that somehow we've conspired a world to maintain familiarity because we're frightened to get lost in the unfamiliar? But maybe that's what meditation is about. Maybe that for some of you, that's what the practice of the form about. Maybe it might come to you now, that's what life is about. To completely get lost in the unfamiliar. What would come alive? What would awaken in this skin and bone? Or maybe it's not skin and bone. Maybe that's its appearance on the third dimension. Maybe on higher dimensions, this is radiation. This is illumination. This is an eternal presence. And maybe from that, we could look at each other and discover that's actually what each and every one of us is. But we've trained our intelligence to hold image, to have information, rather than to be open. So we look for joy and happiness and love through information. I don't know if you can see that. Everyone's looking for love through information. I need this and this and this in that partner, and this and this and this. We're looking for joy through what we like, avoiding what we dislike. We're looking through joy through having sunshine, but let's don't have snow. And some love snow and don't want sunshine. We're looking for all those things that are supremely natural through information. What if we did not have information? Would we naturally be joyous? Would we naturally be full? Would we naturally be open? Would we discover such gratitude and wonder? Is that what's meant when someone said, you must return to be a child? So in a world, is it a world? Or is it a TV set full of information? Ads. Ad says, do this, but don't do this. Buy into that, but don't buy into that. What if the world is simply a TV set? But what if the earth is the living, moving illumination of original nature? Just one part of it, and the cosmos is the bigger picture, and the divine worlds are, it's all here in what we call I. But of course, if we're going to stick to the TV set, we're just going to keep living from that information. Because the unfamiliar is threatening to the familiar. To discover you're not just an agent of you, of a me, you're an agent of the universe and of the skies beyond. Even your finger moves because a sun is blinking somewhere out 200 million years away. Your feet move simply because a cicada just woke up from a 14-year sleep in the ground. What if all this is real? That this body is fundamentally a movement of the universe, hence we're universal beings. What if we've so plasticated, I'm just making this word up, plasticated nature that we'd rather see wild animals in a cage or in a toy shop as plastic? Because somehow we've lost our own wildness because we placated in what we should or shouldn't do. Not knowing we simply close down being the agency of the whole and not of one belief system. Believe it or not, this is satsang. This is just, as it were, an entrance to discover what you think you do, you don't. It's a belief system that you are the doer. And that as much as you might believe the universe is out there and others are over there, the universe is entangled beautifully in all of us, and the divine is entangled beautifully in all of us. And it's an endless play that neither has a beginning nor end. The familiar, I would suggest to you, and I'm going to dramatize this, okay? Okay, 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 everyone's looking a bit not okay. But I'm going to dramatize this. The familiar is a gun at your head and one in your heart and one in your root. Remain familiar. The unfamiliar is joy, abundance, the kind of wealth that's not a thing, but the wealth of what you are as a pure being, in the enjoyment of what's spilling out of its core, which is creation. I would suggest to you, very few really undo this in what appears to be their life, but it's the life of the universe, appearing to have one form. But this one form is the microcosm of it all. And we follow the norms simply because maybe it's too much to discover how amazing each and every one of us truly is. Unbelievable. Also, let's just call it, I'm going to call this in a kind of universal but native kind of tradition of initiation. As if what we are, appearing as a human, has to go through portholes of initiation to create the right kind of energies in the body mind to ingest and digest the more of what we are. No idea if any of you can hear this. No idea. I'm not interested if you can. My interest is only getting this out. That's my only interest. And it's a funny thing, this life. So I'm gonna tell you this funny thing, and some of you that know me might find I'm a funny thing. But I look at things a lot different. Like, for instance, some of you may know that we've just opened up another chocolatery, right? And I can tell you, no one here wanted it, particularly the higher ups. They didn't want it. No, no, no. Too much, won't be successful, all manner of things. But there's no one here that wanted it. It was just coming through. It was like coming out of my mouth, coming out of my eyes, coming out of my ears, coming out of a few other places. I could not stop it coming out. And the thing is, it's still coming out. It's still coming out. And it's going to come out until it's actually all out. But I'm very clear. That's not all that's coming out. And there'll be no stopping what's coming out. Now, isn't that true for all of us? Our pain and suffering is we stop what's coming out because it's not familiar. But it's all coming out of this womb we call I. You and I. Me, us, we. If we had the familiar label on it, you want to control how it's coming out. Every single way you want to control. The accountant will want to control. Sitting over there. The lawyer will want to control, the managing director, the customers want to control. No, I think you've painted that the wrong color. You should. But are you giving birth to anything? Or is birth entirely impersonal? And you can't help but giving birth. Now we're coming to agency. Please. If you want to, and if I'm not boring you too much because I'm not being too familiar. It's what is happening in your life right now that's so painful, if there is such a thing. I would say there probably is, or disturbing. Is it because you're giving birth to the unfamiliar? And what's hurting, the familiar is saying, don't do it, don't do it, stuff it back in your womb, get that back in your belly, don't birth me. Sounds like a Rumi poem, doesn't it? With the snails. Also can take us to what death is. Death is simply the unfamiliar. It's a strange thing. I would suggest that when death happens, it won't be unfamiliar. It would be just, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah. A little bit bigger, a little bit wider, a little bit more than an in. Oh yeah, death. Yeah, get it, get it. Same as life. Oh yeah. It's the familiar that distorts it all and labels everything. Our minds are full of labels. What if you had no labels for anything? So agency is wilder than our normal ideas. It just comes. It just takes place. It just happens. So when the sun seemingly goes out, if you're open, whatever you are will experience your own dark and deep endlessness. But that can take place right now through no longer storing information. The storing of information builds a separate kind of self. I don't know if you've ever looked at this. I look at this quite often. Isn't a Russian just information? Isn't a French person just information? Isn't English just, isn't they just information? What if we have to get all that information and then set fire to it? What if that's the idea? What if we have to get all the information, kind of eat it as children? And we completely have to lose ourself, self, capital S. We have to lose it, information, information. And at some point, we have to get lost in information. At some point, we get lost in not using that information. And we call that self realizing itself. So right now, you might be invited to get lost. But the world, the plastic world in your head will tell you, don't get lost. What if you know you have to get lost to be found? Would that be too wild? Would you start to enjoy the wild? Like a wild star. You ever thought a star is wild? I'll tell you something. A black hole is very wild. It devours universes. What if you're the black hole devouring universes? And what if you're the black hole expelling light to create and to dissolve? No, these are not ideas. These are not just dribblings. These may be siblings or immediate discoveries of response to the question of what am I? What is this? Is education going to do it for you? Or is your own university inside finally where you have to go? Dark in the deep is shining brightly as all of us. It's only information that eclipses that, or is discovering what you are that eclipses the force as you fall out of the illusion that you're limited and will have an end. So, are you then an agent of something greater in this moment? And the paradox is, are you an agent of something greater, but are you the source of that agency too? Another question. If you are really called to discover this, is the illusion coming out of you also agency that aids you discovering more of what you are? In other words, nothing's wrong whatsoever. Hence, God just laughs at its own desire to realize itself when it knows it's already the self. And there's nothing that it's not agency to, because it all happens in itself, to itself, for itself, and yet nothing ever touches it. Here, though, on the human level, apparently, isn't it the most wonderful thing to discover the wonder of all of this in yourself and with other? Isn't that the most wonderful thing? Well, maybe then the untangling of the not so wonderful is also the agency of discovering that wonder. So right now, is this the eclipse of the belief of light outside of me? Am I, without image, that light? And in the stillness of what I am, does the creation come forth, intelligence shine, world upon world opens? Or is that just a quaint idea that I sometimes have? With just a little stillness, yes, I can feel the blood move through my veins. But is the blood moving through your veins the same life that's moving through the universe? Does that inspire you? As I go more silent, do not I feel the vibration of something more than a known body? Is that the deeper level of what the body represents? So then in daily life, will I enter the unknown amongst what the mind tells me is familiar and receive more of what I am other than the familiar? Is that the love that moves myself as that love? A love that is not familiar, that you can find in Hollywood, in books and things like that. A love I find direct, that needs no rubber stamp from anybody. And we can see, can we not? If we pull away from the familiar cries out very loudly. Even to the point of kicking and screaming. But is initiation getting hold of that child with love, compassion, openness, and kind of saying to it, everything's okay. It's all in transformation of new opportunity, of self-discovery. And the world doesn't teach us this, the plastic world, but the earth does. She knows a flower losing its petals is not lost, but finding a new flowering. She knows a bird falling out of the sky is a bird finding another way to fly in the universe. She knows this. How wise and intelligent and willing to go into our deeper mystery are we? Are we all ready to build a new world? One that is utterly unfamiliar. Then you can't buckle up. Remember I said, buckle up. You can't buckle up. Now, if your head goes through the windscreen, so it does. If you lose your head, so it does. Don't worry, you'll get another one. In other words, the more you buckle up, you won't feel everything consciously to its core so that it can transform in brand new likeness of your soul's purpose, mission, and meaning. Anything that's new mustn't have a taint of your past experience, as if you can say, I experienced that. If you can say, I experienced that, you've got a little more drowning to do, a little more learning to do. I don't know, maybe this is just too much. But how can it be too much? Because everyone here knows you're going to die. But does everybody know here, clearly, that there is no such thing as death? That's the question. You can check that out. How many times today did you die? And how many times today did you come back in a new life or the same familiar fashion? If you look at life like this, you may open up new doors of possibility within your own slipstream of time and space and bring forth new opportunities, because the universe, the earth, just mirrors your ability to manifest the unknown you. How many times have you worn a face? Did it always look like this one? How many planets, how many stars have you literally had life on? Have you ever looked at that? How many levels of beyond even the cosmos have you entered? All this is not taught in our schools. Our schools teach us to build the familiar, controllable world. The world does not want wildness. That's why animals are in cages. But if you've really heard this, I suggest maybe you dive a little deeper. Maybe that you'll see whoever you thought was giving satsang here is not giving satsang here. Maybe the cosmos is giving satsang here. Maybe the worlds beyond. Maybe those worlds are even moving your life. Or you are multidimensional, should you discover this. So then, is transformation the desire to deeply, without beginning, and discover what you really are. And learn to not only master energy and experience, but to be grateful for all that comes as an opportunity to transform and realize true nature. And to bless this earth with your lighter ability to bring the stars here, to bring divinity here, to bring self-love and mastery here, and to realize agency belongs to the cosmos, the divine. It comes through us and yet is us. No one's actually doing it. Paradox. We are it. So let's have a little eclipse for a moment. I invite you to close your eyes. Let's just take a long breath. And it's like when you close your eyes in such a field, it's like you feel deeply through the pores, the vessels of the body, into what they're made of, the spaciousness. And the spaciousness has depth. And the kind of depth that's not familiar. And so we learn to completely let go of the familiar, and that's how we discover greater depth, greater possibility that moves and evolves as ability through our humanness. Then the very earth that we walk on will speak to us. Its codedness of thousands of light years of possibilities. Rocks speak to us, plants speak to us, the sky speaks to us, and we speak to each other differently than the familiar. And we can drop into that now. Just keep dropping and softening. It may feel like an expansion or a deepening or an opening. Rather than name anything that occurs, leave it nameless but felt. And experiences in the manifest body dissolve into codes of next higher possibilities. But realize the images that come out of these places are simply the release of old patterns. We do nothing other than feel them. And up through what appears to be the neck or above the head, down the back, open through the arms and the chest. There is a deeper awareness, flowering new life and creative structure that will not be familiar. It will just be a buzz of lightened energy. And one could, as it were, bring your awareness to the crown of the head. Even like those old icons that you see in these old churches, you'll see your mind is vastly open as universal mind, even divine mind. It's not just aura, it's what one truly is prior to the body-mind idea. Body-mind being the instrument of all that is, the agency of all that is. One can come from this spaciousness, depth, and as it were, dissolve the familiar by observing the familiar as awareness. You'll speak differently. You'll see differently. You'll feel differently. You'll act differently. You won't know yourself, which will amuse you, delight you. You won't want to go back the old way. You'll simply discover more of what you are. You'll then begin to understand how the idea of you is manifesting in you and out of you. Change the idea of you, manifest differently by realizing what you are, unfamiliar. I suggest we all take a breath and begin to open our eyes. And I'd love to ruin your familiar some more, okay? So here is some ruining of your familiar. Anything that's nice, oh, that's nice, is familiar. Anything that you should do again is familiar. Anything you don't like is familiar. Everything you like is familiar. It doesn't leave you much space, does it? What does that leave? That leaves everything open to discover it's all your light. And all your images of you dissolve into your original nature. For most of the humans, inhabitants, that's what's coming. For those that are truly open to what they already are, that's very present and beginning to immediately dissolve their idea of themselves and others. So we have a little button. Here it is. I should show you. It's on my table. Here it is. Got it? And I'm going to press this button. It's that one. And you're all going to be put into rooms with other unfamiliar beings, so you can talk in an unfamiliar way. And there's also, at the end of you sharing, there's apple pie and cream. Okay? Anyway, enjoy each other. But I take it you heard, whatever that means. Okay? Okay. Have you ever considered this? Bodies don't just shed skin. All of you may or may not know, you can't, most of the dust in your room is the shedding of your body. Did you know that? No, most people don't. Oh, you did, especially cleaners. I was always cleaning up dead bodies when I was the cleaner. Most people don't know this. Bodies shed skin, but what you don't know is bodies also shed identity. Got your interest, because it is linked into what we've been looking at. Bodies shed skin, and in the DNA, they shed identity. If you look, it appears that we walk to places, okay? Most of us got this idea that I am walking to a place. I go to places, right? Try and stay with it. I have to try and stay with this because this is also something I'm bringing through that's new for me, and I want to get it across, okay? When we speak about flow, we're not actually talking about someone's flow. To be in the flow is to understand that you're not an identity moving. Identities moving stop flow, because identity has to have a certain signature that belongs to space, time, and likes and dislikes, or duality. So to be in the flow, you must not be Joe or Suzanne. You have to let go of your name. You have to let go of your identity. You have to let go of even being born or dying. You have to let go of your address and your nationality. You have to let go. That's what the flow is. The flow is natural throughout the universe. Last week I spoke about wormholes. Flow is being in a wormhole. A wormhole is a universal intelligence, the light of God or source, that's simply walking through its own imagination, walking through its own creative universe. That's what flow is. You can't flow if you think you're someone. There's someone that limits you to the known. Flow is the unknown and the unfamiliar. Okay? If you can hear that just a little bit. Now I want to take that a little bit further before people in this room fall asleep or get dead bored. I have to feed everybody after this cake, biscuits, apple crumble, cream to just kind of placate them because they get bored here. So anyway, let's just stay with this. So if you really want to be in flow, you have to let go of gel. Right? Identity. Identity. That's flow. So that means the bodies that are walking that shed skin also shed identity. And when you walk between flow and being somebody, this is clear. I'm still discovering this. When you walk as a somebody, but you also have some form of flow, so you jump from being somebody to being nobody, because that's what flow is, then that creates loss. Please stay with this. It's crucial. This is going to get really deep in all of us. Being a somebody but wanting flow creates loss. So when you're in flow, you're definitely going to lose identity. Then one guy said, take no thought. So every bugger thinks. I don't know if you know this. And then you all think about your identity. Therefore, you create loss. You can't be in abundance and have a name. You can't be in abundance and have an address. You can't be in abundance and think you're born and you're going to die. You can't be flow and be Joe. That creates loss. This is where trauma comes into this. Trauma is the idea of loss through identity looking for itself to heal itself. Now that's new for me to say that, and I wish somebody writes that down because I've just said that. It's clear to me, right? I can't even say it again, it's so new. So the body in flow is a body being no body, no identification. And when you're in flow, you must know that you're in joy. You have joy, you have openness, you're blessed because you don't have an identity that identifies you with a certain space, a certain time, a certain attribute, a certain way, a certain nationality, all those things. I'm speaking fifth dimensional now and more. So I've jotted this down. So flow is you, us, me, we, in not having a static state. Static states, not dynamic, static states create loss. If you function as imagination or you function as a flow and then you think, you create loss. And so then we try to heal ourselves through blaming another. If you see this, as if there's some other cause than us being our own source. You can't think and not think. And if you don't think, you will think in flow. And this is what's happening to everybody on the planet that's ready for the more of what we are, fifth dimensional and more. So when you look at this, you begin to understand that the body travels through loss, not through gain. So when the body moves in a flow, it's not going to get something for somebody, right? So it loses identity. I don't know if you can see this, because this goes very deep. A being that's awakened from, I'm going to state, from, let's say, third dimension to fifth and more, they have to discover the transcendental manner of accompanying loss in their flow. This is called self-healing and response ability. You follow what I just said? Because it's new for me. I just said it. It's new for me. I've not even written that down. I'm just trying to get something out because it's coming out. It's coming out. So loss is how the body travels. You can't go anywhere and not have loss. You know this because you can travel to Egypt, and at some point, some part of you is going to want to go home. And that's where you invent a somebody. Somebody on there is smiling because she's in Egypt. And then also, loss will also have in you travel to Egypt to get lost, but not actually to lose. In other words, you go somewhere to lose yourself, but not to heal the loss that will accompany the idea that you're somebody traveling. Is that too deep? Too much? Repeat it. Listen to this again. This is where true healing is. True healing is when you discover there's nothing in you really to heal. But true healing is the responsible for your own self-healing. It's a paradox. So, I'm going to go further on. You okay then, Marcia? You're okay? Hello? Bonjour, Marcia. That's the only French I can remember at the moment. Sorry about that. So, when we look at this, we all think we're agents. We do something because I want to, right? But I want to ask you all a question. Can you remember being asked to be born? Now, come on, get serious about this. Don't do the Looney Tunes thing. I said, oh yeah, I choose this incarnation. I choose this incarnation. That's a Looney Tune where I come from. So, did you choose to incarnate? Or were you, whatever you really are, were you enlisted to incarnate? In other words, you could not do anything but incarnate. Further question, have you realized how many levels you already incarnate on? But to placate loss of identification, you stay with the known and remain limited, unsatisfied, unfulfilled, because you can't get hold of the truth. I don't know if it's a fact. It is where I am, but that's not a fact. It's simply the truth. The truth that you are God desiring to experience all that comes out from it and returns. That's what you are. You are God desiring to realize all for all of eternity. That's what you are. So, movement and loss are the same thing if one has a particular identity of self-satisfaction. You can't move and not lose. You can only move spontaneously and not experience loss. If you take one thought, you will grow and yet go backwards. You will flow and then stop. I don't know if you know this, but that's agony. In other words, we have built a world of agony because we don't understand what we are and what we do. If you want to take this any further, you need to come to the Crete retreat. Yes. We need some time to go into these things. If you're really interested, then come along. There's probably going to be another retreat during the year. Egypt, we're still trying to get on. But what I presented to you today is how I'm going to teach and go into this more deeply. To discover you're not a doer. And you're only a loser if you identify with what you believe you've done. Whether what you believe you've done is good or bad, you're a loser. Sorry, losers. Or there's no such thing as winners. There's only realizing what you are without beginning and end.